think we're good to go.
All right, so welcome to today's webinar. This is the Aging Initiative MCC Scholars Program Information Session. This is a webinar series that's coordinated by the Aging Initiative, which is an NIA-funded initiative that bridges the expertise and leadership of two powerhouses in research for multiple chronic conditions. And those two powerhouses are the Healthcare Systems Research Network and the Claude D. Pepper Older Americans Independent Centers, or the Pepper Centers. The Aging Initiative is led by Dr. Jerry Gurwitz at University of Massachusetts and Myers Healthcare Institute, along with co-PIs Elise Adams and Jay Magaziner. And my name is Heather Whitson. I'm a professor of medicine and the director of the Duke Aging Center and the Duke UNC Alzheimer's Disease Center. And I'm part of the Aging Initiative Dissemination Workgroup, which is co-led by Leah Hanson at HealthPartners. So today we are also joined by two Aging Initiative Patient Caregiver Advisory Council members. That is Maria Pellerano and Mary Schrenke, who you'll hear from later. They will be co-presenting with us and providing some of the background related to the stakeholder impact of the MCC Scholars program and how that plays into the application process. So because of the number of registrants that are on today's webinar, the phone lines, I believe, are on mute to reduce audio feedback, but we do welcome and encourage participation using the chat function. If you have any technical or logistical questions, you can also put those in the chat to Ollie, who will be monitoring that discussion. And we want to extend a huge thanks to Ollie and to Ivan, who are from the Division of Health System Science at UMass Chan Medical School, and who do a lot of work behind the scenes to make these webinars and this entire program possible. So at this time, I'm going to pass it over to my partner, Leah, and she will kick us off with a few slides, and then there'll be some Q&A at the end.
Thank you, Heather. So let's dive in. What is the MCC Scholars Program? So the purpose of the program is to create a cohort of emerging leaders who are really committed to the study of multiple chronic conditions and who want to align their research interests and agenda with issues that are relevant to people living with multiple chronic conditions. The Aging Initiative has had the Scholar Program. This will be, is it our 5th year, I believe? We've had 4 cohorts. We will be selecting up to 10 scholars this year. One of the highlights and requirements of the program is attending our kickoff of the program that is held along with the annual Pepper Center meeting, April 26th to 28th in 2023. After that kickoff, there are 6 web-based programs that are delivered on the Zoom platform. And our curriculum is based on 4 elements. First is the significance of MCCs. The second is tools and resources for researchers studying MCCs. The third is developing, implementing, maintaining meaningful patient and caregiver engagement in your MCC research. And the 4th area of curriculum is professional leader development for investigators. So we're really aiming to create this nationwide community and mentoring network to extend and sustain research in multiple chronic conditions. The next slide shows what we call our stool, and we really envision our curriculum, the 4 elements in this way. The top of the stool being career development, and then our 3 kind of legs, and we really need all 4 parts to have a successful MCC Scholars program. The next slide. So why MCC's research? Why is this important? Why are we investing and creating this opportunity in this area? So the most common chronic condition experienced by older adults actually is multiple chronic conditions or multimorbidity, the existence of multiple chronic conditions or diseases. And we know almost 80% of people aged 65 and older have 2 or more chronic medical conditions. What's more is that in clinical trials, patients with MCCs are often excluded from these trials, which isn't great because so many people in that age group have them. In terms of healthcare utilization, older adults with MCCs are the heaviest users. So when you look at the 12% of Medicare beneficiaries with 6 or more chronic conditions, they account for 43% of the total Medicare spending, 50% of Medicare spending on hospitalization, and nearly 70% of post-acute Medicare costs. Next slide. Heather, I'll pass it back to you.
All right. So the other thing, in addition to the curriculum and the sort of content expertise that we try to develop throughout the program, the other thing is some of these, what we refer to as kind of the intangible benefits. So as you can see here, there's a lot of opportunity for interaction and for mentorship and collaboration, and particularly forming kind of a peer network around other people from multiple disciplines that are also interested in MCC research. And in addition, we provide opportunities for grant review, which can be helpful. One thing that we like to say is that once an MCC scholar, always an MCC scholar. So there's now that we've been doing this for 4 years, we have kind of a network of I guess, big sibling program almost that has been formed at this point. That the MCC scholars enter. And then a lot of opportunities because now that we are back to in-person meetings, we kick off with this in-person meeting, and many NIA representatives attend the meeting because we pair it with the National Annual Pepper Center meeting, which is always held in the DC area to make it convenient for NIH representatives to be there. So it's a good time to get sort of FaceTime with our colleagues and representatives from the NIA, and then really exposure to these two kind of strongholds for aging research that both lend themselves to a lot of access to data and people and collaborators and expertise related to your projects down the line. Next slide. So the question of who should apply. So we do ask that you have some sort of a doctoral degree. It can be MD, PhD, or any of the equivalent degrees. So please don't consider that list that you see there as a comprehensive list in any way. It should include, you know, we get questions every year like, are optometrists allowed? Yes. If you have a doctoral degree in some sort of field that and you're interested in multiple chronic conditions, that yes, you are eligible. And we like to see evidence of commitment to research in a field that's relevant to multiple chronic conditions or aging. That doesn't mean that you have to already have publications that include the words multiple chronic conditions or multimorbidity or something like that. Just that you can make a good case for how the research that you are doing or have done is relevant to multiple chronic conditions and could be enriched by a curriculum about multiple chronic conditions. Preference is given to applicants who are in earlier stages of the career. That doesn't mean that you're excluded from applying if you already have an R1 or you've received tenure, but we do tend to give precedence to or preference to applicants who are at a slightly earlier stage. We do ask that you make note of the date of the in-person workshop, because that is a pretty important part of the year and really does help stimulate the sort of bonding within the cohorts. And so April 26th to the 28th, again, it's always held in the DC Bethesda area. And then that you commit to attending the sort of 6 webinars thereafter that are sort of scattered across the next year. Webinars go on every year, and of course, you're always welcome to attend other ones in the future. And then we really do encourage applications from groups that have been historically underrepresented in research careers. This is a great program if you're looking for collaborators. We really do try to use this as a tool to help people build out their networks and meet other people. So coming in knowing that, and that there's lots of encouragement to talk and form collaborations. If it's a time in your career that would be welcome, this would be a good program for you right now. Next slide. So how to apply? So there's an online application. You can find it at the link that's shown there. And you can also Google Aging Initiative MCC Scholars Program and you'll find it. And then you'll be asked to provide your biosketch, a little bit of demographic information, and then we try to keep this application sort of short and non-painless. I mean, I'm sorry, non-painful. And so the you'll put in some short responses to the questions that you see here. And oh, thanks, Leah just put the link in the chat there. These responses that you give really do become the basis of how we sort of evaluate your application to the program. So I think you're going to hear in a moment from our APCAC representatives or our patient caregiver representatives who are also involved in the selection process. Great, here it is. So what's the review process? So you'll fill out your answers to these sort of short essay style questions. And then we look for really two things. I think it's important to know, first of all, that each application is reviewed by at least 2 scientific reviewers and 2 patient caregiver advisor reviewers. So you're sort of, in a way, there's 2 different audiences that are evaluating. And this really speaks to our principle of one of the things that you will learn through the program is the importance of including the patient caregiver voice as a collaborator in any research effort. So the scientific reviewers may be especially focused on things like the evidence of commitment to and the productivity in research that has some relevance to multiple chronic conditions, and we do try to make that appropriate to your stage of career. And then we're particularly asking the APCAC reviewers to also evaluate sort of the relevance of your work and the openness of your work to direct improvement of outcomes or things that matter to patients, to caregivers, to the population that is actually living with multiple chronic conditions. That doesn't mean that you're already actively engaged per se in doing engaged work with patients or caregivers, but that you reveal and demonstrate an understanding of the importance of working with patients and caregivers to inform any research, and also that you can make a case of how your research, even if your research, let's say, is very mechanistic, but that you can make a case of how understanding this mechanism or advancing this methodology will eventually lead to improved outcomes and better life for patients and caregivers. So at the end of the day, you'll get scores or rankings that are from at least 2 scientific reviewers and at least 2 patient and caregiver reviewers. And what we really strive for is to fill the class with individuals that were highly ranked or scored by both types of reviewers. We do review and take a special look at the few instances that we get where those reviews were, there was a discrepancy where the scientific reviewers rated someone a lot higher or a lot lower than the patient caregiver reviewers. And we sort of review those cases particularly as well. But I wouldn't say that either the scientific reviewers or the patient caregiver reviewers are weighted more heavily. Ideally, we're looking for candidates that were made statements that resonated and appealed and were rated highly by both types of reviewers. And then the final thing that I'll make the point about is that we generally can accept about 10 investigators per year into the program. And one of our charges is to make sure that we create a sort of balanced cadre of MCC investigators for each year. So we certainly do take into consideration things like demographics, field of study, type of discipline or background training that you have, as well as the geographic location and trying to make sure that we have some investigators that come from Pepper Center institutions, some investigators that are part of the Healthcare Systems Research Network, and some investigators that are part of neither. So we do try to get kind of a well-rounded cohort. All that is to say that sometimes we end up with extremely highly ranked, or not sometimes, every single year that we've done this, we've ended up with more very highly ranked, very well qualified, outstanding applicants than we could include in the program. So what we strongly encourage people to do is to apply again. If you've applied to this program in the past and you've not been accepted, please do apply again. We absolutely take that into consideration. Next slide. All right, and now I'm going to hand it over to our collaborators, Mary and Maria.
Thanks, Heather. This is Mary Schrenke. I'm a patient and caregiver advisor partner. And just a real quick intro to me. I am part of the PFA network, which is a national group sponsored by the PFCC partners. And I also do work in Northern California with Sutter Health, as well as nationally with the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And been working with the team here, for several years, and really value the opportunity. And we'll talk more about that in a bit. And my partner, Maria, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Maria Pellerano. I've been almost a lifelong adult, my entire adult life. I've been a caregiver and, of course, a patient my entire life. And I work nationally doing grant reviews, assisting others with projects across a variety of different illnesses, but particularly around multiple chronic conditions and cardiovascular conditions. That's all I'll say about myself.
So this is Mary. One of the things that we really wanted to do is, not only introduce ourselves, but also introduce the council, which is, a big part of the reviewing process. There are a number of us. There's at least 10. And really, we try to bring a very representative voice to the table in terms of, to try and meet the diversity that we have seen in the years and hope to continue in the grant applications that the organization gets. And we have people really all over the United States, and we're really here to serve as as a resource. And we try to not only are we looking at the review process per se, but as Heather was talking about, we're part of not only these tangible benefits that you get to interact with at least 2 folks, but in the process of applying, there are a number of opportunities where you can connect with patient and family caregivers as partners and really expand your network in that way. That's somewhat of an intangible as well. So it's something that we really value, and we learned quite a bit. I don't know, Maria, you can certainly add your take on the review process and some of the things you've learned.
Yeah, just go ahead with this slide, Mary. At the end, I'll do this last slide. So
that sounds great. Next slide. So what we wanted to do was to give you a sense of the framework that we use, and it's probably the most important thing to be thinking about is if the work that you're proposing is going to have a positive impact on the quality of life for people that live with chronic conditions. And it's important and we rank them, high, medium, and low, and give you a sense of what we're thinking about as far as guidance in terms of answering that question. And I think the most important thing for me is when you're looking at the impact of the quality of life for people. It's how people actually do live their lives. And particularly when you're, I think a lot of times when you're thinking about a patient with multiple chronic condition, they're a person and they have a life. And oftentimes they have at least one caregiver, if not many. And it's that interaction and how better understanding the diseases, plural, that they have to live with, and really what the impact is on their life. And for me, that's something that we do our best in when we give feedback. We really try to call it out. And this scoring system has been a learning experience for me as well. It really helps me sort out my thoughts, and hopefully it will be helpful to you as well. Maria?
Yeah, we can go to the next slide. So the APCAC, as our short name, is the patient caregiver advisors. We try to engage patients and families in all aspects of research. So this is really important to us as a group, that the patient and family voice is listened to, at least when thinking about research. And so identifying opportunities to improve care and outcomes, this is very important to us. We want to facilitate research that's really high value to patients and providers. Sometimes as researchers, we forget that we need to think about the people who need to get our research. And I see this every day in my life outside of healthcare, whether it's a computer program that makes no sense to anybody or the manual for it. So it's really important to focus just and understand that. So how does that translate to someone who's not quite yet, but is very interested in multiple chronic conditions, but not quite yet working with patients and caregivers? It's just bringing forward that you're interested in it. And the council as a whole, individuals within the council, when they're doing the reviews, really look for that. So you may not already be doing it, and that is fine, as Dr. Whitson had mentioned, but it's that you have an interest in it and have an interest in understanding how to do it. And we're all learning from each other. We learn a lot from the scientists in the initiative, and they learn from us as patient and caregivers. And then the other thing is to connect. This is part of what you get through the MCC program, the connection to academic and health system researchers, which sometimes are different, and then train and support for new scientists dedicated to studying MCCs. And we are there as much as you want us there with the research. That's it.
Yeah, Maria, this is Mary. If I could just add one more thing, is to really emphasize the point that Maria made, is that even if you have not in the past done much work or any at all directly with patient and caregiver partners in your research, we're here as a resource. And the sooner you can connect with us and reach out through this application process in the program, the more different perspectives and voices from our advisory council that you'll have access to. And I just did, over the years, we've seen, as Heather mentioned, applicants reapply, and there's just some really amazing projects that, at least in the first go around, may not get funded, but there's just so much great research going on. We're there to help, and especially in the early stages of your grant writing process. So I just would encourage all of you to connect with this team and make the most of it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mary and Maria. We'll move on to some key dates. So all applications are due January 6th, 2023 at 11:59 p.m. I think that's probably Eastern time, if I would guess. We will be sending the scholars who have been granted will be notified on February 17th. And again, the key dates to consider for the kickoff event for our scholars is April 26th to 28th, along with the Pepper Center annual meeting. Next slide. So for more information about the AGE initiative, maybe Ollie, you can put that link, or Ivan, and then there's Ollie's email, and she's happy to answer any questions you have. If you'd like more information or have a specific question, please reach out. Now, I believe we're going to open the floor to questions. As a reminder, we'd like you to type those into the chat. And as you are preparing your questions for us, we put together some frequently asked questions, which we can run through. Maybe we'll hit something that you're thinking of, but please do type in the chat function the questions you have for any of us on the call. So the first one is, does my research have to be about older adults and aging to be considered? It does not. So while older adults are the largest population with MCCs, the goal of the cohort is really to promote the study of all MCCs in its entirety. The second question, we receive this a lot. I'll be receiving my PhD in a few months after the application due date. Can I still apply? And unfortunately, the answer is no, that the degree requirements do need to be met before the application is due, not before the program starts. Good news for international researchers that yes, you can apply to the program. If you have any questions as an international applicant, again, you can reach out to Ollie, whose email is on the screen. Heather mentioned this, let's say you have applied before and you're thinking, oh, I wasn't accepted. Should I apply again? Does that count against me? It definitely does not. We actually, we do look at that, and we've had many of our scholars have been funded or accepted on a repeat application. So highly encourage you to apply again. There is a full scholars FAQ on the website that has other questions. So please look there to find more FAQs. All right. Next slide. I think we now will open it up to questions or comments. Thank you, Ollie, for posting those links. So Heather, I think one of the questions we have, can you provide examples of the specific webinar curriculum topics? Oh.
Yeah, so I'll actually, we have an e-library of past topics, so I'm going to hunt that down and put it in the chat unless Ollie or Ivan beat me to it. But I would say that some of my favorite ones, and we tend to do some repeats of a popular topic is always measurement of multiple chronic conditions, or measurement of morbidity burden. Also, we've had some, oh, there it is right there. So that you can go and look at some of the lists of previous webinars. Some of the popular ones also have to do with how multiple chronic conditions makes its way into policy decisions. So at the level of, like, for example, how CMS determines quality for people with multiple chronic conditions when just sort of guideline adherence may not be appropriate. We've had topics on things like de-escalation of pharmacy, which is obviously a important topic in people with multiple chronic conditions, and then other methodologies. And then we also, one of the legs of that curriculum stool has to do with the sort of how-tos of how do you engage patient and caregiver advisors. So sometimes very practical things like, where do you find them? What sort of training and that sort of thing are you obligated to get as an investigator, and what sort of training or orientation should you provide to patient and caregiver advisors that are joining the research team, and practical questions like, how much do you pay them? So I guess those are just some examples. Another thing that we do is we work with a work group that has several past scholars, and they help us generate ideas for the future webinars.
So we had another couple questions pop up in the chat, one of which Sherry has already addressed, but I'll bring it up for a group discussion. Dorina asks, when you say fine tune your application, what exactly do you mean? Like talk through the application or get feedback on the application itself?
This is Maria. One of our other advisors is quietly on the Zoom, Sherry Binns. But we would talk to you if you wanted. We would probably not review the application ahead of time because that wouldn't be fair to all the other applicants, but we would just talk through your research and what you're thinking, and have a conversation.
Yeah, this is Mary Schrenke, one of the other patient caregiver advisors. I would just slightly build on that and just remind the potential applicants that the council has 10 members, and each one of those people has a really broad lived experience, and so you'll more likely than not find somebody that's got some connection to a really good group of patient and caregivers that you're focusing on or thinking about focusing on. So I think it's a really rich team, and it's one of those where if we can't answer your questions or if you feel like there's more to happen, we're there to help answer whatever questions you might have and give you some inputs. We're here to help, and we'll do that. That's one of the things over the years that I've really I learn a lot from not only the researchers on this team, which are excellent in their own sort of zones of expertise, but the patient and caregiver folks partners are just have a tremendous richness as well. And I would really encourage anyone who's thinking about connecting through some of these early webinars to do that, and to also look at the archives, because there's some great materials there.
Thank you, Mary and Maria. We have a question from Ivana. Last year you offered pilot funding. Will that program be available again this year? That's a really timely question. Where currently the finishing touches are being put on the RFA. So I don't believe I can announce the details of that yet. It will be a little different than in past years, but news of that should be coming shortly. And we'll make sure that it's circulated and that you should receive it. Let's see, Karen asks, my institution doesn't currently have a Pepper Center, but they've put in an application to become one. Would it be appropriate to discuss what my role would be for the Pepper Center if it was funded? I ask, since this work is where I am beginning this is where I would begin my work in MCC research and care. I think that would be a great thing to talk about. Heather, how about you?
Yeah, and hello, Karen. It's nice to see you here. I would say in that, though, that I would be cautious about framing your application such that it sounds like your interest in MCC or any activity in MCC is only contingent on if the Pepper Center gets funded this year or not. I don't think that that's what you mean, but I would just be careful to make sure that's not what's implied or how it comes across. Fingers crossed for your institution and the Pepper Center, and I do think that discussing the fact that through the Pepper Center application is often a great time to develop an MCC portfolio or agenda, but I think you just want to make it clear that you'll pursue aspects of that agenda regardless of the funding.
Yeah, really good point. Ivana has a follow-up question. She asks, can you apply to both the Scholar program and also the pilot program and vice versa? And yes, you can apply for multiple funding opportunities within the Aging Initiative. That wouldn't be a limitation to apply for the Scholar program. Some differences between them, I think as a reminder, the MCC Scholars program funds your travel to the Pepper Center annual meeting for those 3 days, but it does not offer any support for your time or research activities. It's as opposed to the pilot awards, which offer support for a research specific project. So they would have more dollars attached for time or statisticians or programmers' time to accomplish the tasks of the pilots.
I will note, though, that we've had a number of MCC scholars that have successfully gone on to compete for the pilot awards. And I think that's not entirely by accident. I think it's partly because they've formed collaborations through the MCC Scholars program, either with other MCC scholars or they've just gotten to know other individuals in the Pepper Center or the Healthcare Systems Research Network and gotten familiar with data resources that have helped them put together a competitive pilot award application.
Yeah, I think that's where the intangible benefits become tangible, right? And that's, I think, one of the great things about our scholars is the networking and getting to know people, and you may sort of know, and also being able to connect to people through connections. So I think it's sort of Heather might know someone who knows someone, and you can get a warm handoff or a connection to a large number of people that you would have access to that you wouldn't without this opportunity or being part of this team. We recently had a reunion of our scholars cohort. So we had an all scholars webinar where we brought everyone together. It was really fun, all 4 years of our scholars to reconnect and get updates and kind of rekindle those connections, and then have networking across our cadres of scholars from the 4 different years that were funded. I think it was a really fun time, but also productive, and making those relationships and connections to, find partners for writing grants like a pilot grant, or I think an excellent example of Heather said, once a scholar, always a scholar. Does anyone else have any final questions? I'm seeing silence in the chat. Did we miss any, Ollie, that you can see?
I do not see any others.
Well, I guess I'd just like to end thanking you for coming today. We've really done our best to make this a low burden application. There's no letter of intent. We're looking for short, concise answers to the several questions along with your bio sketch. So we strongly encourage you to take a shot and apply for the program. We'd love to see your application. We want to send you our gratitude for attending, and we hope everyone has a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday.
Thanks, everyone. And thanks again to Ivan and Ollie for their work to put these together.
Everyone.
Thanks, everyone.